What happens when two music legends with decades of experience collide over artistic integrity and respect? You're about to find out. Because what went down between Morris Day and Jennifer Hudson on her talk show was absolutely explosive. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and by the end, one of them was walking off set in pure frustration. Asterisk, it all started innocently enough. Jennifer Hudson was interviewing Morris Day, the legendary frontman of the time, about his new music. Maurice, dressed in his signature flashy style, appeared relaxed and ready to talk about his 4-decade career. "Morris, it's such an honor to have you here," Jennifer began warmly. "I've been a fan since I was a little girl, listening to my parents play your music." Morris smiled and replied, "Well, thank you, Jennifer. It's always a pleasure to be here with someone who appreciates real music. You know what I mean. The kind of music that actually means something." That last comment had a subtle edge to it. But Jennifer didn't seem to notice right away. Asterisk, she continued with her prepared questions, asking about his creative process and what inspired his latest work. Morris spoke passionately about how today's music lacks soul and authenticity. "You see, Jennifer, when we made music, we put our whole selves into it. We didn't have computers doing half the work for us. We had to actually sing, actually play instruments, actually connect with people on a real level." Jennifer nodded politely, but her expression began to shift. "I think there's incredible talent in every generation, Morris," she said. "Artists today are doing amazing things with the tools available to them." Asterisk, tools. Morris repeated with a scoff. "That's exactly the problem. Music isn't about tools. It's about talent, unfiltered talent. Something you either have or you don't." The tension in the studio grew heavier. Jennifer's smile became more forced as she tried to steer the conversation toward his upcoming tour, hoping to diffuse the moment. But Maurice wasn't ready to let it go. Asterisk, "You know what, Jennifer," he said, leaning forward. "Since we're talking about talent and authenticity, I have to ask you something. Do you really think some of these artists today, these reality show winners in contests, participants, have what it takes to create lasting music?" His question hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the room understood the implication. Jennifer's background as a former American Idol contestant made it clear who he was referring to. Asterisk, her face tightened slightly, though she remained composed. "I think talent comes in many forms, Maurice," she said evenly. "Success in the music industry requires hard work, dedication, and yes, talentry, regardless of how someone gets their start." Morris leaned back in his chair with a knowing smile, the kind that said he wasn't convinced. The exchange left the audience in stunned silence, realizing they had just witnessed a rare and raw clash between two icons from different eras of music. Asterisk, that's a diplomatic answer. "But we both know the truth," Morris said, leaning forward with a smug smile. "There's a difference between manufactured success and organic artistry. Some people earn their place through years of grinding and perfecting their craft, while others get fast-tracked through television exposure." The audience was completely silent. Jennifer's jaw tightened as she asked, "Morris, are you suggesting that artists who get their start on competition shows aren't legitimate?" He shrugged casually. "I'm not suggesting anything, Jennifer. I'm stating a fact. Real artists don't need a platform handed to them. They create their own platforms through pure talent and determination." Asterisk, Jennifer set her notes down and met his gaze squarely. "So, you're saying that someone like me, who won American Idol, isn't a real artist?" Morris smirked. "Your words, not mine. But since you brought it up, let me ask you this. How many songs did you write before you got on that show? How many instruments could you play? How many years did you spend playing small clubs and fighting for every opportunity?" The tension in the room was thick. Jennifer's professional composure began to crack, and the fire in her eyes made it clear she was done playing nice. "Maurice," she said sharply, I think you're confusing opportunity with talent. Yes, I got my start on a competition show, but everything I've accomplished since then has been through my own hard work and dedication. Asterisk has it, though. Maurice pressed, clearly enjoying the discomfort. Or has it been through the machine that was already built around you? Record deals lined up, promotional campaigns ready to go, industry connections handed to you on a silver platter. Jennifer's voice rose slightly, the emotion cutting through her usual calm. That's incredibly disrespectful, Morris. I've worked my tail off for everything I've achieved. I've won an Oscar, multiple Grammys, and I've earned every single one of those accolades through my talent and effort. Asterisk Morris waved a hand dismissively. Awards don't mean much when they're handed out like participation trophies. Back in my day, you had to really prove yourself before anyone even considered giving you recognition. That struck a nerve. Jennifer's eyes flashed with anger. Participation trophies. Are you serious right now? You're sitting here questioning my legitimacy as an artist when I've proven myself time and time again in multiple fields. Asterisk, multiple fields. Morris repeated mockingly. See? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Real artists focus on perfecting their craft, not spreading themselves thin across movies, television, and whatever else keeps them in the spotlight. Jennifer sat up straighter, her voice firm. So now you're criticizing me for being versatile, for taking on different challenges, for growing as an artist, for exploring different mediums. Asterisk Morris remained calm, his tone condescending. I'm not criticizing anything, Jennifer. I'm just pointing out the difference between someone who's dedicated their entire life to music and someone who treats it as one option among many. The studio fell dead silent. Jennifer's face was tight with restrained fury as she tried to maintain her composure. You know what, Maurice? I've been nothing but respectful to you this entire interview, and you've done nothing but insult me and my career. Asterisk, I haven't insulted anyone, Morris replied smoothly. I've simply shared my perspective on what real artistry looks like versus what passes for artistry in today's manufactured entertainment industry. Jennifer's voice trembled, a mix of anger and disbelief. Your perspective is outdated and, frankly, it's bitter. You're sitting here trying to diminish my accomplishments because what? You feel threatened by artists who found success differently than you did. Asterisk Morris raised an eyebrow, his smirk returning. Threatened by a reality show contestant. I don't think so, sweetheart. The word hit like a slap. Jennifer's professional mask shattered. Don't you dare call me sweetheart, she snapped, her voice slicing through the air. I am a professional. I am your host. And I am not some little girl you can patronize. Asterisk Morris looked momentarily surprised by her reaction, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. Whoa, calm down there. I was just being friendly. Jennifer let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Friendly. You've spent the last 10 minutes questioning my legitimacy, dismissing my achievements, and now you want to call that friendly. That's not friendly, Morris. That's disrespectful. Asterisk. He shifted slightly in his seat, trying to maintain control of the room. Look, I'm just being honest about the state of the music industry. If you can't handle an honest conversation about artistry, maybe you shouldn't be interviewing real musicians. Asterisk Jennifer's voice went up an octave. Real musicians. Are you suggesting I'm not a real musician? I've sold millions of records, performed with some of the greatest artists of our time, and been recognized by every major music institution in this country. Asterisk Morris gave another dismissive wave of his hand, that same gesture that had been infuriating her all along. Selling records doesn't make you a musician, Jennifer. Having a good marketing team and being on the right television show at the right time, that's not the same as being an artist. The audience sat frozen, watching two titans of music collide in a moment that would be replayed and debated for years to come. Jennifer was now fully standing, her hands planted firmly on her desk. "You know what, Maurice? I've had enough of this," she said, her voice trembling with restrained fury. "You came on my show. You accepted my invitation. And you're sitting here insulting me and everything I've worked for? What gives you the right?" Maurice leaned back, letting out a low, unpleasant laugh. 40 years in this business gives me the right. Being part of a group that actually changed music gives me the right. Creating something original instead of covering other people's songs on national television gives me the right. The last jab landed hard. Jennifer's face flushed with anger as she shot back. "You want to talk about originality, Maurice? Let's talk about it. How many of your biggest hits were actually written by Prince? How much of your success came from riding on his creative genius?" Maurice's confident demeanor faltered. The mention of Prince had clearly hit a nerve. "Excuse me," he said sharply. "Prince and I were collaborators. We were partners in creating something revolutionary." Jennifer didn't back down. "Collaborators?" she repeated with biting sarcasm. "From what I remember, Prince wrote your songs, produced your albums, and basically created your entire image. So if we're talking about manufactured success and riding on someone else's talent, maybe you should look in the mirror." Maurice stood abruptly, his chair rolling back with a loud scrape. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice rising. "Prince and I had a creative partnership that lasted decades. We built something together that influenced an entire generation of musicians." Jennifer folded her arms, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "And I respect that. But don't you think it's a little hypocritical to sit here questioning my authenticity when your biggest claim to fame is being associated with someone else's genius?" Maurice's face turned red, his composure slipping. "That's completely different, and you know it," he shot back. "Prince and I were a team from the beginning. We grew up together in Minneapolis. We developed our sound together. That's not the same as winning a singing contest and having a career handed to you." Jennifer let out a bitter laugh. "Handed to me? Do you think winning American Idol was easy? Do you think the years of training, the performances, the competition against incredibly talented people was just handed to me, compared to what real artists go through?" "Yeah, I do," Maurice said bluntly, not missing a beat. "You sang songs that were already hits in front of judges who were looking for the next marketable personality. That's not artistry, Jennifer, that's auditioning." The insult landed like a slap. Even the studio crew shifted uncomfortably, sensing how deep the wound was. Jennifer's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "You know what, Maurice? I invited you here to talk about your music, to give you a platform to promote your work and celebrate your contributions to this industry. Instead, you've spent this entire time trying to tear me down and diminish my accomplishments." Maurice crossed his arms, unmoved. "I'm not tearing anyone down. I'm just speaking the truth about the difference between earned success and manufactured success. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why." That was it. Jennifer's composure shattered completely. "What makes me uncomfortable," she said, her voice rising with emotion, "is having a guest come on my show and disrespect me in front of my audience. What makes me uncomfortable is someone who benefited from Prince's genius lecturing me about authenticity." Maurice's face darkened, his tone suddenly sharp and defensive. "Don't you ever question my relationship with Prince?" he barked. "You have no idea what you're talking about, and you have no right to speak on something you weren't there for." Jennifer shot back immediately, her voice strong and unwavering. "And you have no right to question my journey or my talent. The difference between us, Maurice, is that I've never needed to put other artists down to make myself feel better about my own success." The studio was dead silent. The air crackled with raw tension as the two legends stood face to face, two eras. Two egos and two very different definitions of artistry colliding in one unforgettable moment. Morris took a step closer to Jennifer's desk, his expression cold and confident as he spoke. "The difference between us," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet studio, "is that I earned my place in music history through decades of innovation and creativity, while you got famous by singing other people's songs on television." The words hung heavy in the air, and the audience went completely silent. Jennifer looked at him with disbelief, the mix of anger and hurt in her eyes impossible to miss. "I cannot believe the level of disrespect you're showing me right now," she said slowly, her tone trembling slightly, but filled with pride. "I've accomplished things in my career that most artists can only dream of, and I've done it through hard work, dedication, and yes, talent." Morris smirked, his eyes full of arrogance. "Real talent. If you say so." Those 4 words hit Jennifer like an insult too deep to ignore. Her expression changed instantly, her voice rising with each word. "If I say so. Let me tell you something about saying so, Maurice. I say so because I've proven it over and over again. I've proven it on Broadway. I've proven it in movies. I've proven it on records. And I've proven it every single day of my career." Morris rolled his eyes in mock annoyance. "Here we go with the resume again," he said sarcastically. Jennifer leaned forward slightly, her eyes blazing. "Yes, here we go with the resume," she shot back fiercely. "Because unlike some people, I don't have to live in the past or tear others down to feel relevant. My resume speaks for itself. And if that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine." Morris let out a dry laugh, his tone dripping with disdain. "Your resume was written by television producers and record executives who saw dollar signs," he said smugly. "My resume was written by audiences who experienced something real." Jennifer's eyes widened, and she took a deep breath before answering. "Something real," she said, her voice rising with emotion. "You want to talk about something real? Real is standing on that American Idol stage week after week, singing my heart out while millions of people judged every single note. Real is taking that opportunity and turning it into a career that spans multiple industries. Real is winning an Oscar for my first movie role because I brought something authentic and true to that character." Morris only shook his head, his voice laced with condescension. "Anyone can act emotional and win an Oscar these days," he said flatly. "The standards aren't what they used to be." That was the breaking point. Jennifer's face shifted from anger to pure fury, and her voice dropped low, sharp, and controlled. "Get out," she said. Morris blinked, taken aback. "What?" Jennifer pointed toward the exit, her tone final. "I said get out. This interview is over. I will not sit here and let you disrespect me, my career, and my achievements any longer." The room was frozen in disbelief. Morris looked around the studio, trying to gauge if anyone would step in. "You're kicking me off your show because I'm telling the truth about the music industry?" he asked, his tone indignant. Jennifer stood her ground. "I'm kicking you off my show because you're being deliberately insulting and disrespectful," she said firmly. "This was supposed to be an interview about your music, not an opportunity for you to attack me personally." Morris began gathering his notes, shaking his head. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he muttered. "Young artists today can't handle any criticism or real conversation about the industry. Everything has to be sugar-coated and fake positive." Jennifer's voice rose again, this time edged with disbelief. "You think what you've been doing is criticism?" she asked. "You've been personally attacking me from the moment you sat down. That's not criticism. That's cruelty." Morris adjusted his jacket with a smug smirk. "I'm not being cruel," he said. "I'm being honest. And if you can't handle honesty about your career and how you got here, maybe you shouldn't be in this business." That was it. Jennifer's patience snapped completely. "Don't you dare tell me what business I should or shouldn't be in," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "I've earned my place here through talent, hard work, and dedication, something you'd understand if you spent less time living in the past and more time recognizing the present." The studio audience sat frozen, watching the tense standoff unfold, the air thick with the weight of everything that had just been said.